what we'll do is we'll interweave your opinion as we move through a conversation with Mark Strong and David
Can I
Bedell.
just say, there is a thread on the Internet Movie Database, which is what's the betting that Mark will hate Kick-Ass. I mean, this is what everyone assumes I'm going to hate it.
Right. Well, let's set it up. Mark, you're the man. You're in it. You're one of the stars of the film. Just set up Kick-Ass, please.
The plot?
Indeed. And your role in it.
Do the plot synopsis. Go on.
Okay, I'll do my best. It's a kind of about a young guy who wonders why everybody wants to be Paris Hilton, nobody wants to be a superhero, attempts to go out there and become one, hires a fairly sort of crappy suit off the internet and gets his ass kicked, basically, and you discover he has no powers. Into that world come...
He has the power of being invisible to girls.
Yes.
It's a very good joke.
Into that world come two vigilantes who are highly trained, a father-daughter team who are, to all intents and purposes, superheroes. They are after a crime lord, played by myself, Frank D'Amico, New York gangster, and hilarity ensues.
Frank himself has a son who then becomes involved as well in order to keep it as it's young people fight. So, sorry.
That's right. I'd forgotten that.
Crucially important.
Yeah. He comes to me. My son wants to be part of the business. He also wants to be a superhero, and there is a plot twist in which he enables his father to capture Kick-Ass. I hope that's not given too much away.
I just meant that you have to say that his son wants to be a superhero as well. But that's
Did I not say that?
No, you did. Yes, but then you went to the plot twist. But that's perfectly fine. I'm glad to see that somebody else can do that as well as me.
But your son is, it should say, it's Christopher Mintz-Plasse, who of course was McLovin in Superbad.
Yes.
And you're playing ethnic again?
I'm playing New York Italian. I mean, I am half Italian, so I'm not straying too far from home.
So, Mark, the issue is, and we'll get some of the emails. Overwhelmingly, people are talking about the certification of this film. Is it, and it's a 15?
Yeah.
Is it borderline? Is it 15? Borderline 18? What do you think? Is it pitched about right?
Well, I mean, as before, I would refer people to the BBFC website, in which the BBFC give their, very literate judgment. I think they're perfectly right with a 15. I think it's the really weird thing when the film was first being previewed. A couple of friends of mine who were sort of, fairly hardened critics went to see it and said, "Well, I really like it, but it is tough, and it's going to, the BBFC are going to have a problem. They're going to end up cutting it at 18, largely because, it's a young actress involved in, as you've said before, swearing. Although there's actually not as much swearing in it as people think. I mean, there are a couple of instances which people remember, but those have rather clouded people's judgment about the rest of the script, and certain scenes of violence. Most shockingly, a sequence at the very beginning when you're introduced to her, in which you see Nick Cage playing her father, shooting at her, and she's wearing a bulletproof vest, which seemed to me to be referring perhaps to that scene from Gomorrah, in which you see a similar sequence, although in Gomorrah it's played much more darkly, much more horrendously. And actually I think the BBFC are completely right. They've understood the humour of it. They absolutely do understand comic book aesthetic. They also understand in their judgment that not dwelling on pain and the infliction of pain is different from a kind of comic book description of violence. I think their certification is completely right. I think it demonstrates just how far the BBFC have come in the last 10-15 years. I think they're bang on the money, and I would advise people to go and look at their judgment on the website. Bear in mind, of course, it does contain plot spoilers.
So for that, because I haven't seen Kick-Ass, but Inglourious, famously, an 18 certificate. So it's less, so the violence is less played than Inglourious, is it?
Yeah, I mean, Inglourious is much more a movie which relies upon the enjoyment of the infliction of pain and full on, and it's a Tarantino movie, and it's a lot more sweary, and it's a lot more boring, to be honest. I mean, there's no point in holding this back. I really like Kick-Ass. I saw Kick-Ass on Sunday in Southampton because it was previewing over the weekend. The thing I thought about it, and I say this as the highest compliment, it was the kind of film that if it had opened and closed and disappeared, and 4 or 5 years later you'd found it on a late night double bill, you would have thought, this is just the best cult movie. It has exactly that same appeal that something like Buckaroo Banzai had, which I thought was a really it's very hard to actually manufacture, in inverted commas, cult movies, and most mainstream movies that attempt to do that just end up making something that is genuinely naff. I thought it had a really particularly offbeat, odd quality which you don't see in mainstream movies, quite apart from the fact that it's just very entertaining. I think the visual style is terrifically well done. I love the way in which the colour scheme works. I think it's wittily written. I think it's very, very well played. Quite apart from all that, I thought it was one of the rare examples of a genuine mainstream cult movie, and I do mean that as a compliment.
Yeah, well,
is that not a contradiction in...
No, that's exactly what I'm saying, is generally if mainstream, I mean, it depends on how you define mainstream, because as far as I understand, didn't Matthew Vaughn finance it himself and made it under his own auspices, and then later on it was then picked up? It wasn't something that was, I mean, it is the least test-screened film I have seen. It's a film that does not look like somebody sat down and showed it to a test audience and said, what do you think? You like them? You want to change that? You want to take the edge off that? You want to do that? It just looks like somebody made the movie they want to make. Whether you like it or hate it, it is the movie that it is. And that's evident in pretty much every frame. Plus, it is laugh-out-loud funny.
It was independently financed, actually, and it's $29 million, I think, which is nothing for the type of movies it's taking on, like Clash of the Titans or whatever. And
whose ass it will kick.
Yeah, I'm sure it will.
I think the studios originally, the story goes, turned it all down. I mean, he did take it around the studios, and they weren't interested because they thought it was too challenging.
Right.
But he's done it himself. I think you also have to mention that it is inextricably linked with the comic book, the graphic novel. I mean, there is the genesis of the comics happening at the same time as the film. Issue 1 to 8 hadn't finished coming out before the film was finished, so there was an enormous collaboration went on with Mark Miller, the writer of the comic, and Matthew Vaughn. So I think that's also why it has a kind of genuine freshness about it, because it wasn't hampered by anything other than kind of two guys making up this story as they went along.
Also, it's sort of its own genre. It's sort of by marrying a lot of genres, really well. I mean, because it's kind of Tarantino with superhero with kind of teen comedy romance, and that I haven't really seen those three genres put together before.
It's incredible. The satire is enormous. It glorifies in its sort of incorrectness, and the beginning is a massive homage to Peter Parker and Spider-Man. It starts in exactly the same way, and I've actually read somebody feeling a little bit upset about that, thinking it therefore wasn't original. But the point is, it subverts everything we think we know about superhero movies and has fun with it.
And the funny thing is that actually the nicest scenes in it, the tone of the film is closest to things like Ghost World. It has that kind of comic book sensibility rather than the kind of the blockbuster sensibility. I mean, that's what I mean when I say the thing that impresses me is just how odd it is. I mean, there's been a lot of stuff written about outrageous, shocking, blah blah, we all think, which I think is largely nonsense, but it is genuinely an odd film, and that I think is something to be celebrated.